All right, good morning and welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. It is -3 degrees here in central Iowa, but it is an awesome morning. I wanted to tell you about a new course. This one is a free course. Over the last month and a half or so, I continue to get P2s, P3s, even a P1 or two that are sending me some notes like, hey, I follow your podcast and really wish there was, kind of a course for us. And said, okay, well, I've heard from enough people that maybe this is something we need. And so the premium things I do, helping people with either the LOI, their CV, phase 2, or the interview, it just really didn't fit into that. Because each of those goes very deep into a very small part of the residency process, but a very important part. And in addition to, the pharmacology class I have, I was like, okay, well, maybe there's a way that I can kind of put everything together so that we can go wide to help this group. So the Pre-Residency Audio Academy is a free course for P1, P2, and P3 students looking to residency. I know that not every pharmacy school has a program, and really, for every credit that you're paying $1,000 to have your own professors teach you how to get a residency. I don't know, it seems a little excessive. If if your tuition's closer to the $30,000 to $50,000 range, you're paying between $1,500 and $2,000 to have someone tell you how to get a residency. And again, that's a little bit excessive, I think. And I have a dad who's an immigrant, and I know that some of the processes and things that we do in the U.S. are very different than things that happen in other countries. So I'm especially hoping that those that are international students, or maybe English isn't their first language, will also benefit from this as well. So the way to get in is just to go to residency.teachable.com. You click on the Pre-Residency Audio Academy and you can get in there. There's no strings, anything, just a number of videos that I've put in so that you can kind of get a feel for the challenges and some of the things that you're going to need to do. But what I wanted to do is give you something, a little gift for the kind of charter members, if you want to call it that. So what I've done is, under free general resources, I put in 25 free audiobook codes for the book Read This Before Pharmacy Residency, The Right Moves on the Road to a Residency Match. And the reason I put that particular book's audiobook codes in there is because I did this with a physician. And I'm from Montgomery County, Maryland. So it was just kind of neat that, when I met him through a mutual friend, that he was also from Montgomery County, Maryland, though we're also very different in our timelines. He went to Churchill, I went to Wooten. So, really, the zip codes are not that far apart. And what we did was we put together a 6 or 7 hour book for those students who are trying to kind of get their grades as high as they can at the same time that they're trying to have all these leadership activities and do all the things that make you, just a rock star residency applicant. So that's kind of my gift for you for the first 25 that get in. Please only take one code. I don't have the time to make sure that I email back and forth. I don't want to make it difficult. But again, that's going to be under free general resources. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start talking to those students who are P3s, P2s, and that are interested in residency. And I was asking them, well, what do you need? And the first kind of thing was to understand just how different the application for residency process is than the application process was for becoming a pharmacy student. So the pharmacy application for being a pharmacy student is close to 90% acceptance. So I think it's like 88 point something right now. So if you apply to 2 or 3 schools, the likelihood, unless you apply to the top schools only, is very high that you'll be accepted to a pharmacy school. However, it's very common to get 3 rejections for every 1 acceptance in residency application. And that's a bit of a shock. So when I hear that some people are only applying to 4 or 5 programs, it really, really kind of, breaks my heart. Yeah, you're going to hear the story of the person that got 6 or 7 residency, acceptances out of 6 or 7, and that is not the norm. The norm is about 3 to 1. So when you're talking about how many positions each residency site is actually going to fill, so let's say a residency site has 4 positions, they're only going to interview between 6, maybe 5 and 8 applicants for each of those spots. So if they have 200 applications and they're only interviewing, we'll say the high number, we'll say that they're interviewing 8 for 4 spots. Okay, we'll do that, 16, 32. So that's 32 out of 200. Or 16% will get an interview and 84% will not get an interview. And of those 16%, you now go again to only 4 of them, or 25% of that number. So when you go overall for a 200 applications to 4 residency position site, you're talking about a 2% acceptance rate. Now, as you apply to more sites, obviously some of the sites are going to have fewer applications and some are going to have more. But what I put in here first was a PharmD to MD success story. I interviewed a medical school applicant who applied to 36 schools. And you say that's awfully excessive. As a pharmacist, wouldn't he have a great chance to get in? Again, there's so many misconceptions with medical school and with residency. Being a pharmacist or nurse is one of the worst possible majors you could have. The acceptance rate is lower than almost all of the other majors. And you're like, why? They would be so qualified. And the reason is that they already have a profession. So medical schools look at it as, well, why didn't you just come to medical school? Why did you go to pharmacy school? Why did you go to nursing school? It's actually best to be a music major. Sounds crazy, but those that are playing the piano actually have the highest chance. It's not necessarily the piano, but that play an instrument actually have the highest chance of getting in, followed by physics and engineering majors. Sounds strange, but they want problem solvers. They want people that are interesting and unique. Having a health professional go to another health professional major is not unique. It's something that happens all the time. It's like being a biology major. So the reason why the more biology majors make it into medical school than any other major is because there are more biology majors applying than any other major. But it doesn't make it the major that's most likely to get in. So I don't want to go into medical school as much, but I just want to make clear that's what's happening. And then the second one was that choosing the right appies for residency. And they must be before your January interviews. And you say, well, that's not fair. I don't have control over it. Well, some schools use the PCOA and say, all right, well, if you are the top student with your grades or you're a top student with the PCOA, we will give you first choice. The most valuable person to you for residency is actually the experiential learning group. Those people have more control over your residency odds than anyone else in pharmacy school. Unless I guess the dean told them to tell you or something like that. But choosing the right appies are huge because when you get to the interview, imagine you've had only one 6-week rotation or 5-week rotation in a clinical site where somebody's had 4 clinical rotations in a NICU, a PICU. Maybe they've had their general hospital, but they've also had pediatric. Their clinical ability and knowledge and way to talk about things is going to be much more like a resident than yours is. So getting the right appies at the right time is huge. Okay, and then what I've done is I've put in just kind of stripped down the ones that I have for very, very specific groups like the LOIs and the CVs and the interviews so that you can get a very broad idea. So the next thing is understanding how important the letter of intent is. And honestly, to me, it is the most important document because it is reflective. When you write a letter of intent and you write a letter of intent to somewhere that matches, you're like, yeah, this really fits in. It was easy to write. But then you're writing a letter of intent to someone who it just doesn't fit. And if you look on the boards, so many rejections are because of a poor fit between offerings and what you have done. And it's so clear when you write a letter of intent that puts in and matches your abilities and your appies to their residency rotations. But if you just write a letter of intent that copies the UCSF model that just says, here's all that I did, you never bother to match the two. And I just get so frustrated with this because it is a waste of $40 or $50, whatever it is, to apply to that next site. Okay. Most students are actually pretty decent with the CV, though I've seen some CVs that are absolutely terrible because they have not had a professional go through it. Again, this residency thing, just like applying to medical school, those people that are successful, most of them are getting help, like paid help, not just, Mom, can you look at my grammar on my cover letter? No, they are going all in. And, I'm like $100 per thing. I'm not super expensive. If you break down how much you pay for pharmacy school, it actually works out. If you talk about the actual days that you're in school, you pay between $100 and $200 per day you step on campus. So when somebody says, oh my gosh, $100 is so much, I'm like, it's $3 a day for a month. You cannot tell me that if you're paying between $100 and $200 a day every month of your pharmacy school experience that you cannot afford $3 a day for a month. So, and the other thing is that because I'm editing it for you, it makes your other templates so fast you save a ton of time. Anyway, I digress. So letters of intent, CVs, residency interviews. So I just had a great interview with someone who earned 8 residency interviews and kind of talk about that. Letters of recommendation. So important to understand how to get good letters of recommendation, and you are a huge part of it. If you just hope for the good letter, you're absolutely doing it wrong. You have to put in what it is that you did during that experience, because they might not even remember your name, much less what you did. And then understanding the actual document is out there. It's very easy to get, understanding that as well. All right, the next piece is mid-year, understanding if you need it, if you don't. Things have really changed a lot, like from mid-year. So it's good to go to mid-year, but the more important thing is to find the individual sites that you want to apply to and talk to them in their smaller webinars. RPD Insider Tips, so you get to actually hear from a couple of residency program directors. What's that sound like? What do they want? What are the things that they're looking for? This interview was one of my favorites because it was a student that was my Appy student who interviewed an RPD and ended up at that site. So bold, and I just was so proud of her. Then what's it like to hear from a current resident? And I just picked the one resident that was at, there are some academic medical centers and they're in our community, but there's some in-betweens. Inova Fairfax is one of those. That's in Northern Virginia. Then ranking the residency programs, really understanding what it means to say, well, what do I feel like I'm going to get a match with? Because after the interviews, you have no idea. You don't get any card like, here, we would put you probably in the top 10% or top 20%. You get nothing. All you get is thanks, and we'll see you in 2 months, maybe. Right? So how do you rank them with that little information? Phase 2, one of the top candidates who will admittedly say that she made a mistake. She only applied to, I think, 4 programs. She was very narrow with her search and didn't have any what you would call safety residencies or whatever. And then she goes through, it was a 2-part series. We spent almost an hour talking about it. But what do you do? What do you do in phase 2? And how do you make that happen? And she did a great job making it happen. And then once you get that clinical career and cover letter, how do you actually apply for a clinical position? So I wanted to have these very broad, I guess, segments of your journey from kind of middle of P3 to the graduation and then beyond residency, so that you have an idea of what's ahead. And I just talk about this all the time, but I love Steve Jobs' you can only connect the dots looking backward. So what I think is really missing in many colleges of pharmacy is just what are the things I'm going to need to do with residency? Can I hear from some people that are doing it? And I put RPDs in here. I put current residents in here. I have talked about success stories of people, interviews with people that have, under very difficult circumstances, made it through, a phase 2 application process. So I want you to succeed, and I think it's kind of a Greek tragedy that you have to pay or use up 2 credits, 1 credit to have somebody teach you how to get a residency. It's a free course. Just go to residency.teachable.com. And again, the first 25 people that come in, I've got audiobook codes for you for Read This Before Pharmacy Residency, a 7-hour book about the right moves on the road to a residency match. But I think this Audio Academy is a great way for you to hear about residency, to learn about residency on your way into your appies or on your way in back to school. So tell your friends, whatever. And if you got questions for me, it's always TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. I'm pretty good about responding, and I'd love to hear from you.